Thank you for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you are here from the last time, from part 1, we welcome you back. This is going to be part 2 of Legionella Identification and Prevention, the 4-part webinar series from Environmental Diagnostics Laboratory. Today's part will consist of understanding ASHRAE Standard 188. And just a reminder for everyone, if you get 4 out of 5 answers correct, we will be having questions interspersed throughout the presentation. You will be registered for an Apple Watch raffle, which will be held on March 15th. Today's presenters is going to be myself. My name is Ronnie. I'm the Quality Assurance Manager of Environmental Diagnostics Laboratory, and I have with me my laboratory director. His name is Dr. Sahai.
Hello, and thank you for everyone joining this webinar.
If anybody is curious about whether or not the presentation will be available, we do have handouts right now. If you look at the program, we do have part 1 and part 2 slides so that you can go ahead and grab those now if you need them or if you'd like them. We will also have them available later. We'll also have a recording of this presentation set up later, and we'll let everybody know about that. We'll go ahead and begin the presentation now. Just to go over this first part, this is the overall view of the presentation today. We're going to have a quick recap of part 1 just to let everybody kind of be refreshed or see what they missed out and see if they could go ahead and look at that past presentation. The main core of this is going to be the ASHRAE 188 standard. We'll also go over elements of the standard. And at the very end, we'll have a discussion where we will take any questions that anybody may have, and we'll have any last thoughts after the presentation. So a quick recap of what we went over in the first part. We went over the 5 W's of Legionella, W's being who, what, when, where, why, and how. The ecology of Legionella, where it's found, how you should sample for it. Pathology and the risk of certain groups who may be higher risk for Legionella infection and things along those lines. We went over some laboratory techniques, different methods that are used to identify Legionella. Went over a few different management regulations. This time we're going over just one specific one, which is the ASHRAE Standard 188. We went over some preventative and corrective actions in terms of Legionella inside a building. And we have provided the link for the Part 1 slides on this presentation, and you should be able to also find the video of the last presentation. So now we'll begin the presentation of the ASHRAE 188 standard, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Dr. Sahai. What does ASHRAE stand for, and can you go over the purpose of the standard?
Yes, that's a very good question, because ASHRAE is a registered trademark name for the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers, INC. So that's what ASHRAE stands for. Basically, the ASHRAE 188 standard is a standard by ANSI ASHRAE 188-2015. That's what it is called as. And ANSI is the organization which makes the standard for ASHRAE. That is American National Standard Institute. That's how it is being recognized. This particular episode, we are going to focus mainly on the standard, what it talks about. So first, let me give you a little bit of background and history that how this standard come in place, and it was for a while in public review, and then finally in the summer of 2015, this is being accepted by the ASHRAE and released as a standard, which is simply called as a Standard 88-2015. As a matter of fact, that the ASHRAE Standard Committee on May 27, 15 approved this, which is basically also approved by the Board of Directors ASHRAE on the June 2015, and finally the American National Standard Institute is approved on June 26, 2015 and released as a standard. So the American National Standard Institute and ASHRAE, when they release, there is a lot of question, and people start also asking me that It is a standard, talks about like, how much Legionella we should have or we should not have. But basically, this is in a standard for maintenance. It's not a standard for like, you should have this number or you should have that number. So what it talks about like, the risk management for building water system. And one more thing I want to let our viewer know, that it is not regulated in the Code of Federal Registration, CFR. So this is a standard simply released by these two organizations, which I said, and people are encouraged to use that in order to manage the risk. So what this standard talks about, it basically emphasizes the design, construction, commissioning, operation, maintenance, repair, replacement, and then expansion of new and existing building, and how to minimize the Legionellosis, that is the risk associated with Legionella. So that's what it is in nutshell.
Okay, now we have a basic foundation of the standard itself. So, Dr. Sayed, can you tell us what are some of the core elements of the standard?
Well, this is very good, Ronnie, because this is a shorter webinar. It's like designed for only 30 minutes. So what we are going to do, we are going to take the core part of this standard and we are going to elaborate it to our viewer so that they can utilize in their interest. As a matter of fact, this standard is altogether having 9 sections, but we are going to deal with section 4 through section 8. That's the core element, that's the meat there. And this standard also have 3 annex, which is named as Annex A, B, and C. So if you get your hand on that book released by the ASHRAE, you can find all the finer detail there. Today what I'm going to do, I'm going to emphasize, as I said, the core element, the core point, how we can utilize in order to minimize the risk of Legionellosis. So the very first element is under section 4 in the standard book, and under the section 4, main emphasis has been given on 3 bit element, and those are building designer, building owner, and healthcare facility. So building designer is basically talks about the survey of building design and water system component of water system. So what it does, it basically describes that each new building should be designed and its water system should be designed and determined that it should not be having any kind of problem that can proliferate the growth of Legionella or put any kind of element that support the Legionella. And the detail of that is been mentioned under the section 5 of this standard. So that is the first part of the building designer, and the requirement, what are the requirement for the building system, so that they can determine what kind of building water system need to be placed. And I also want to emphasize one thing, that this particular standard which we are discussing today is not for single family home. It's, again, I repeat, it's not for the single family home. That's not being the consideration. Now, the second point is the building owner. So that talks about the building owner's responsibility, in other words, how to implement this standard or how to practice this in a standard. So basically, it includes the survey of existing, new, renovated, addition or modification, type of building in terms of water system. Then it is the responsibility of owner, or owner are encouraged to make sure that they are in compliance with the requirement. The detailed requirement of building water system is mentioned under section 6 of this standard, which is basically narrates that how you should be going about making the building water system in order to minimize the risk. As mentioned in the section 4.1, that building survey and building water system again need to be designed appropriately, that one should not be run across this problem. Ronnie, now these are the simple building, but in case of healthcare facility, it is being a little different. As you can understand, in the healthcare facility, the building water system should be more stringent, and the criteria is being mentioned in 4.3.2, or comply with the requirement which is mentioned under section 4.2 and 6 and 7. I think, Ronnie, you are telling me there is a trivia question after this slide. So please go ahead and do your trivia question, and then I will take care of the 2 more points on the healthcare facility.
Okay, so like Dr. Sahai just said, we will go ahead and launch the first question. Give everyone about 30 seconds to go ahead and answer it. As you see, it's Legionellosis risk management for building water systems is A, a law regulated in the Code of Federal Regulations, B, a law that is regulated by the states, C, not a law regulated under the Code of Federal Regulations, or D, none of the above. Give everyone about another 5 seconds or so. And we'll go ahead and close the poll. So we'll share the results. It looks like most 65% of you got it correct. It is not a law regulated under the Code of Federal Regulations. Now we'll go back to the presentation.
So can you go please one slide back, because I have to take a couple more points from there, which I want to emphasize. Is that in the healthcare facility, there is an additional requirement that there's supposed to be an infection prevention and control activity in the hospital. And this infection control activity or prevention activity must be certified by like a national or internationally recognized body. And at the same time, in the healthcare facility, they should have an epidemiologist on staff, and their minimum qualifications should not be less than a master's degree or equivalent in the related field. So these are some additional requirement in the healthcare facility. Is that clear, Ronnie?
Yes, it is. So we'll go on to the next section now, which is section 5. And Dr. Sahai, can you go ahead and tell us exactly what is a building survey?
Well, building survey is not like, you know, that how building is looking. It's not like fancy looking building, but it is basically the whole building survey is divided into 2 parts. The first one is talk about the water system. What kind of water system one can have in a building, and what are the, like, you know, type of building, whether it is an open loop or closed loop of a building, whether they have like a whirlpool or fountain, a spa, etc. They have ornamental, like, you know, water fountain, etc. And then there are, like, you know, several other aerosolizing or misters, etc. that is embedded in the building water system. So one can make sure that what is basically the structure of the building water system. And under that structure, we need to make sure to identify the vulnerability or the factor that can be directly associated with Legionellosis, such as it is a multi-housing. Like I said you, that this standard doesn't apply for a single family home. It is being also said in that standard that if it is a more than 10-story building, then that building is more vulnerable than otherwise. And then the healthcare facility where 24-hour patient intake is there is also, like, you know, one of the risk factor. And the building space utilization is the another factor should be considered for Legionellosis risk.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and ask question number 2 now, and we'll see if everybody's still paying attention. Remember, if you get 4 out of 5 correct, you will be entered into a raffle for an Apple Watch. Question up now is section 4 of ASHRAE 188 deals with what? A, compliance, B, building surveys, C, general requirements, or D, microbiology? Give everyone about another 5 seconds, and I'll go ahead and close the question. Okay. And it's closed. Let's go ahead and share the results. A little bit less than the last question, but 48% of you got it correct. It is, oh, I'm sorry, I mistook it. It is A, compliance, so only about 24% got it correct. Remember that you can still make it if you got the last question correct, and we'll go ahead and continue on to the next slide. This section is the general requirements for Section 6. After I explain this, Dr. Sahai will go a little bit more in depth with it. We'll go over water management programs, program development, building water systems, and designing building water systems. Dr. Sahai, what are the essentials of a WMP or water management program?
This is very interesting, and this is one of the core part of this whole ASHRAE standard. The detail of this general requirement is given in Section 6 of the standard, which basically require compliance with the section, and it is being determined by the Section 4 of this standard. So water management program essential is like very first thing that you need to create a team of knowledgeable person, knowledgeable in terms of various elements, such as the person should be capable of managing the overall program. People should be also knowledgeable about the water system. People should be also knowledgeable about the corrective action and identify the corrective action. People should be also documenting or like how to keep making a real document on the maintenance. So this is a multifarious approach, and on a staff there may be microbiologist, maybe industrial hygienist, maybe as simple as plumber who has a very good knowledge about the water system, or there may be other epidemiologist on a staff. So a team can be formulated in order to make sure that all the risk which is involved in the water system can be identified and addressed appropriately. Right, Ronnie? That's the water management team, water management plan team. So the very first step is that you have to have a team knowledgeable about the building water system, and they should be knowing that what's going on in order to manage it.
Okay, that makes sense. Can you go over a little bit of water management program, the development implementation of it?
Yes, the water management program is that the very first thing is that it starts from the water entrance, like from where the water is getting in the building, so that the very first point of control. And basically this flow chart is explaining you the step-by-step process, and as you can see in the end of this the chart that your last step is the documentation. That's what I was trying to indicate. But this chart kind of very essential, and it can be followed, and if it is followed in this direction, then we are going to minimize the risk. So that is about the building water essential, like a management plan, how you should be a start, and that was the step-by-step process.
Okay. Could you please talk about building water systems in regards to the standard?
Yes, the following slide is showing you a diagram which is elaborating that how the water supply enter in a building, what are the utilization point, and as you can see, it's a self-explanatory slide that there are Legion mentioned there that there are black backflow preventer, and then there are the water flow, that how water is being distributed in the building. So that can help a great deal to understand the water. So if it is just for an example, this is not applicable to each and every building, but for an example, I have shown you that how you should be identifying that the water enter in the building, where it goes for utilization. So that is this diagram is explaining. Now, the second slide is basically, talks about like a point of use, where, once it enter in the building, how it is being distributed and what are the utilization. So you basically identify that, like, for an example, this is water going, and these all are point of interest, so that you can understand that how this water is being utilized in the building. And then you can see that some of them are the heat is a concern there. Some of the point is identified that not much treatment is being given, and some of other point is going to explain you about the hazardous condition, which is we call external hazardous condition before even the water come in the building. You understand, Ronnie?
Yes.
Okay.
And with that, we're actually going to go ahead and ask our third question for this presentation. Let me go ahead and throw it up on the screen for everybody to answer. Give everyone about 30 seconds. This one is Section 5 of ASHRAE 1888 deals with what? A, building surveys, B, general requirements, C, healthcare, or D, compliance. Leave it on for about another 15 seconds. And we're going to go ahead and close the poll now. Share everybody's results. We got 52% with the correct answer, and that is Section 5 does deal with building surveys. Go ahead and go back to the presentation now. It's going to let me. There we go.
So this particular slide is explaining that how you can identify and control, monitor the contamination in a building water system. As you can see in the slide, the disinfection monitoring is one of the good parameter in order to minimize the risk. As you can see in this flow diagram, that if you treat the water which is coming with contaminated or otherwise, then if it is meet the requirement, meaning if it is meet the criteria, then life is good, and keep maintaining that cycle, which you can see here in this cycle. I have maintained and I have shown that this is keep continuing, just the documentation is required. But the problem happens then when it not meet the requirement. If it fails the criteria, then again you have to be documenting everything, and then you will treat it again, and you see that whether you actually arrive to meeting the criteria or not. If you meet the criteria, then life is good, and you can just maintain the documentation. If not, then you have to follow this loop in order to address it appropriately, so that this cycle keep continuing. So that is about the monitoring and disinfection of the Legionella in building water system. Now the next sentence is basically identifying that how to monitor and control the chlorine. One of the thing is that if you can maintain the certain chlorine level, then it is going to be anti Legionella kind of scenario. So there are ways how you can monitor the control. For an example, you can test the level of chlorine in water. If the chlorine dioxide, if you are treating as a treatment, if their concentration is about 0.1 milligram or so, then you are less vulnerable. You can also test the water for colony forming unit for the bacteria, meaning the other type of bacteria. If that bacteria level is also high, then you are more vulnerable. You can also see the stagnancy on the different kind of equipment and the water pipeline. You can also look for the biofilm, So if the biofilm formation is there, then you are more vulnerable. So these are the some clue I wanted to provide you, and it need to test on the different location in order to make sure that you are not covering that much of risk. So it's a short presentation, as I keep telling you, because these are very complex subject, but I try to simplify it so that I can present at a glance view that how we maintain. And many of our viewers in past ask us that what we should do about the control measure. So some of the thing I said you that you test your water for other bacteria, protozoa, and the chemical residual, for the chlorine dioxide and etc. That gives you a very good idea about the plant.
So it looks like building water systems maintenance is very important. Are there any prescribed requirements for it?
Yes, the ASHRAE Guideline 12 deal with it, and they have exclusively mentioned about the design, operation, maintenance, startup, shutdown, water treatment, etc. And one can see the detail on that section which I just said. But the potable water system is mentioned under 7.1, gives you the very specific. Then cooling tower and evaporator, evaporating coils are the other one where we should be paying attention, because that sometimes harbor bacteria. So their detail is given in section 7.2. The whirlpool, spa, etc. is mentioned in 7.3. Ornamental fountains and other water features is given in 7.4. And other aerosol generating mister, atomizer, air washer, and other humidifier is mentioned under 7.5. But basically, in all these cases, some commonality is there. That is basically talks about the design, their operation, and how to a startup and shut down. So a procedure may be follow on a periodical basis, and whenever it need to intervene, if this is failing the control criteria, then the initial step or the essential step need to be taken to avoid the Legionella colonization.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sahai. And with that, we're going to go ahead and ask our fourth question. Make sure everybody's still paying attention. Please look at the screen and go ahead and answer. Question is, what is required to be a part of the WMP team? A, knowledge of water systems. B, identify and take corrective action. C, ability to oversee the program. And D, all of the above. Go ahead and give about another 5 seconds because we are about to hit 2:30, so we'll try and wrap this up as quickly as we can for everybody. And we'll go ahead and close this poll, share the results. Looks like 95% of you have been paying attention now. We've got all of the above is the correct answer for that question.
This is very important, Ronnie. The standard which I just described is also talks about the microbiological testing. And especially you see this microbiological testing is an important surrogate in order to determine whether a facility is contaminated with the Legionella or not. And I have simplified this through a chart here. You can see that first we need to determine a frequency, and then sample collection is one of the very important steps here. Like you collect the sample, then you do the laboratory testing, and after laboratory testing you can interpret the result whether it is under the acceptable limit or it is non-acceptable limit. If it is acceptable limit, then it's satisfactory, and you can just maintain a record on that, and you can follow the frequency as described or as adapted. Whereas if it is not satisfactory, then you have to again start sample collection and the laboratory testing, and until and unless it meets the satisfactory, the cycle need to be continue. So that's how we test the Legionella in water.
We'll move on to section 8 now. Dr. Sai, can you elaborate more on the requirements for the design of building water systems?
Well, the design of building water system is really elaborated in the section 8 of the ASHRAE 188. But generally speaking, a system design overview and intended mode of system operation is the one where we should need to pay attention. And the documentation and design of need to be available to everybody who is in that building to identify the hazardous condition, etc. The balancing is one of the main thing for which a report need to be prepared, and balanced report need to be given to the building owner in order to see that the water is used or utilized as well as it is maintained in a way it should. And then commissioning is a big part because the procedure shall meet the requirement of the AWWA standard 651 or AWWA standard 652, which AWWA is basically American Water Work Association. So detail of these standards are mentioned there. So this is again a very complicated section, but it really very beneficial. If you practice that, then you are kind of minimizing the risks of Legionella.
Thank you, Dr. Sahai. And with that, we're going to go ahead and ask our last question of the presentation. Should hopefully be on everybody's screen now, and it is ASHRAE Guideline 12 provides which of the following? A, portable water systems, B, aerosol generating misters, C, ornamental fountains, or D, all of the above. We do apologize for going a little bit over time, but hopefully everybody did enjoy the presentation, and we will have everything available. If you need the slides or the videos or anything like that, we will have available at a later time. We'll go ahead and close the poll now. And once again, we got 95% of everybody choosing the correct answer. So good job on everyone who listened. And hopefully all of you got 4 out of 5 so you can have your name entered into the raffle. And we will go ahead and go back to the presentation, which is the end of our presentation. I will see if we have any questions available. But we will be having our part 3 on March 15th. And we hope to see everyone who's here on that date as well to see the sample collection basics for Legionella. Thank you for joining us and listening to the presentation. We appreciate it, and we do have our list of the different departments here at Peer Control Services that can help with any needs. We're always seeking potential business opportunities and entertaining environmental microbiology testing. I'll go ahead and leave this up for everybody just in case you'd like that contact information. Once again, we do have the handouts available to everyone so you have that information on hand. And feel free to always send us an email with any questions, give us a phone call. We're more than happy to discuss anything. And once again, we hope to see you on March 15th. Thank you for listening.